Imagine a world without the internet. At first, it seems almost inconceivable. We live in an age where digital connectivity is as fundamental as electricity or running water. It pervades every facet of daily life, from how we communicate and entertain ourselves to how businesses operate and governments govern. Yet what if the internet had never come into existence? What if the grand vision of connecting computers globally had remained an unrealized dream? This alternate reality opens a portal into a world shaped not by instantaneous digital communication, but by older, slower, and often more limited forms of information exchange. To understand the depth of such a world, we must first trace the roots of the internet, its transformative power, and then envision the cascading effects its absence would have on society, culture, economy, education, and politics. The internet, though relatively young, only about 5 decades old, has become a critical infrastructure underpinning modern civilization. Without it, the trajectory of human progress would have been dramatically different. The origin and evolution of the internet. The internet story begins in the late 1960s with the ARPANET project funded by the United States Department of Defense. Its initial purpose was to create a decentralized communication system that could survive potential nuclear attacks, allowing military and academic institutions to share information seamlessly. Over the next few decades, this military academic network evolved into a global public utility. By the 1990s, the invention of the World Wide Web by Tim Berners-Lee and the emergence of user-friendly web browsers opened the floodgates, making the internet accessible to the masses. Suddenly, people could communicate instantly, access an unimaginable amount of information, shop online, watch videos, and interact socially in ways previously unthinkable. The internet catalyzed globalization, fostered new industries, revolutionized communication, and democratized knowledge. It flattened hierarchies, enabling anyone with a connection to publish content, engage politically, or start a business. Its absence would not merely erase conveniences, but fundamentally reshape how human societies function. Communication without the internet: slower, limited, and localized. Without the internet, communication technology would have remained largely in the analog age well into the 21st century. Landline telephones, postal mail, telegraphs, and fax machines would continue to be the primary modes of long-distance communication. International phone calls, which are expensive and sometimes unreliable even today, would be the main tool for instant contact across borders. Fax machines, now mostly obsolete, would still be in widespread use for sending documents quickly but clumsily. Postal mail would remain the backbone for correspondence, leading to delays measured in days or weeks. The absence of email would radically slow business operations. Companies would rely on postal mail and courier services for contracts, invoices, and reports, slowing decision-making and increasing costs. Collaboration across time zones and continents would be painstakingly slow and less efficient. On a personal level, people would have fewer options for quick connection. There would be no instant messaging, video calls, or social media platforms to keep friends and family close across distances. The world would feel larger, more disconnected, and slower paced. Social media's role in shaping culture and politics would vanish entirely. Platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok have transformed how people interact, form communities, and mobilize politically. Their absence would limit the ability of grassroots movements to organize quickly, reduce the spread of viral content, and keep social interactions predominantly local. Economic consequences: no e-commerce, slower markets, more barriers. The global economy today heavily depends on internet connectivity. E-commerce is a trillion-dollar industry enabling consumers to purchase goods and services with unprecedented convenience and choice. Giants like Amazon, Alibaba, and eBay would never exist. Instead, brick-and-mortar stores would dominate retail. Consumers would have to visit physical shops to buy almost everything. Price comparisons would rely on newspapers or in-store visits, increasing the cost and time required to shop. Specialized or international products would be far less accessible to the average person. Small businesses would face immense challenges growing beyond local markets. Advertising would be limited to print, radio, and television, which require significant investment and lack the precision targeting of digital ads. The barrier to entry would be high, limiting entrepreneurship and innovation. The financial sector would face severe limitations. Online banking, stock trading platforms, digital wallets, and cryptocurrencies all products of the internet era would be absent. Banking transactions would rely on in-person visits, paper checks, and phone calls. International trade and finance would be slower and less integrated. Without real-time data, stock markets would operate on delayed information, potentially increasing volatility and reducing efficiency. The rapid flow of capital across borders that fuels modern economies would be hampered. Education. Restricted access. Fewer opportunities. One of the internet's most profound impacts is its democratization of knowledge. Without it, educational opportunities would be confined by geography and resources. Students and educators would depend heavily on textbooks, libraries, and physical classrooms. Remote learning, online courses, and virtual classrooms would not exist, leaving those in remote or underserved areas at a disadvantage. Research collaboration would be constrained. Sharing papers and data would require physical mail or infrequent conferences, slowing scientific progress. The rapid dissemination of knowledge, which today fuels innovation and cross-disciplinary breakthroughs, would be curtailed. For self-learners and lifelong students, access to free or affordable online resources like Khan Academy, Coursera, and Wikipedia would be impossible. The information gap between wealthy urban centres and rural or poor regions would widen. Media and entertainment, localized and limited. Without the internet, the entertainment landscape would remain traditional. Television, radio, cinemas, newspapers, and physical media such as CDs and DVDs would be the primary sources of entertainment and information. People's exposure to global cultures would be limited by the availability of physical distribution and broadcast reach. The explosion of independent content creators on platforms like YouTube and Twitch would be absent, concentrating media production in the hands of established companies and broadcasters. News cycles would be slower, relying on scheduled TV broadcasts and print newspapers. Breaking news would take longer to reach the public, and there would be fewer opportunities for citizen journalism. While this might reduce misinformation and sensationalism associated with social media, it would also restrict diverse voices and perspectives. Political and social implications, centralized control, and slower change. The internet has redefined political engagement by enabling direct communication between politicians and citizens, real-time activism, and global solidarity movements. Without it, political discourse would be controlled more tightly by traditional media and political elites. Grassroots mobilization would depend on physical meetings, printed flyers, and word of mouth. Authoritarian governments would find it easier to control information and suppress dissent without digital leaks, encrypted messaging, or international scrutiny facilitated by the internet. However, slower information dissemination might also reduce rapid polarization and the spread of extremist ideologies online. Globalization and cultural exchange, more fragmented and slower. The internet has been a primary engine of globalization by connecting cultures, markets, and ideas. Without it, globalization would progress much more slowly. International trade would rely on slower communication and logistics, and cultural exchange would be limited to physical travel, traditional media, and books. People's understanding of global issues like climate change, pandemics, and humanitarian crises would be slower and more fragmented. Privacy, security, and surveillance. Different challenges. While the internet brings new privacy risks, it also creates tools for encryption, whistleblowing, and digital rights activism. Without it, surveillance would be more localized, relying on physical methods and traditional intelligence. Cybercrime would not exist, but traditional crime and fraud would persist. Technology and innovation, limited by lack of connectivity. The internet underpins modern technologies like AI, cloud computing, and the Internet of Things. Without it, innovation in these fields would be much slower and more isolated. Daily life, more manual, less convenient. Everyday conveniences like online shopping, GPS navigation, food delivery apps, and remote work would be absent. Workplaces would lack email and video conferencing, making remote collaboration difficult. Conclusion: a world slower, less connected, and less efficient. Imagining a world without the internet reveals how deeply embedded it is in our lives. While its absence might reduce some negative aspects like misinformation, It would also severely limit access to information, economic opportunity, social interaction, and innovation. The internet is more than a tool. It's an infrastructure that shapes the fabric of modern society. Without it, the world would be vastly different, slower, more localized, and less interconnected.